Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Pooja here, back with Professor William Vandenberghe from UT Dallas. So I would like to first welcome the professor and thank you so much for joining in, for accepting the invitation.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Professor Vandenberghe is a professor and associate department head of the Material Science and Engineering department. If you are a person who is actively searching for a PhD or want to pursue their career in computation chemistry or material science, this podcast is for you. So he has a diverse research group of unraveling electron transport at the nanoscale using theoretical and computation methods. The material of interest are conventional semiconductors, two-dimensional materials, topological insulators, layered magnets, novel dielectrics. So I will ask Professor to first introduce himself. So Professor, can you please take us through your journey growing up in Belgium, winning Mathematics Olympiad, studying at KU Leuven, then working at IMEC, and now being a professor at UT Dallas? How did it all unfold for you?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, I don't remember the beginning, when I was born, that part, the first couple of years, I don't remember. But after that, I always remember being, pretty good at math, and then later in high school being pretty good at chemistry and physics and that kind of topics. So then I kind of, the Belgian trajectory is you're born in Belgium, you stay in Belgium. So then I went to Leuven, which is, I think, the highest ranked school in Belgium. And at that time, I was kind of, I won in my last year of high school. I won the Mathematics Olympiad. So that kind of told me I might actually be pretty good at math. And I went to the International Math Olympiad in Glasgow, although I didn't do that well over there, but that was fine. I still had a good time. So then I was doubting between doing math, physics, and engineering. And I ended up going for engineering. Which I think now I'm kind of happy I made that decision. So there were a couple of things. So one of the things was I always like to I have very broad interest. So I like the chemistry and the physics as well. So I felt if I restrict myself to something, then engineering is probably like the one that gives me the biggest portfolio. And so that's kind of how I entered university. And then, yeah, I did fine. And then after a couple of years in Belgium, you had to choose your major. And yeah, I kind of chose to focus on nanotechnology because that was, a lot of physics, which I liked. So that's kind of towards a master, which in Belgium was the default at the time to do a master's. And then after the master's, you could get a job. That's what a lot of people do. But I was interested, I didn't feel like I knew enough. That was kind of my main motivation to do PhD. And so, yeah, I decided to do a PhD. And in Leuven, there is a nanoelectronics research center, IMEC. So that kind of drew my attention. It was international, and they do high quality. They're still a very big institution. They do high quality research. So I talked to a lot of people there. I also did my master thesis there. So that's kind of how I ended up working there. And yeah, again, I did my math. I've always liked computers as well. So then computational research kind of became a natural thing. That's the start of the PhD journey. And then I did that for 4 or 5 years. I got a scholarship that paid for my stipend in Belgium. And during that, I did want to explore internationally. And I feel that that's probably the first deviation of the default path in Belgium, where I did a 3 months internship. At the time, I was already here in Dallas with Professor Fischetti. Um, and then I did pretty well in my PhD. I published a lot of papers. I remember something like 40 papers. A lot of them co-authored as well. So I didn't do all that work myself, but it was like a nice environment, active research. So yeah, I wrote a couple myself and then co-authored a lot with other people as well. So that kind of well, then I guess I graduated my PhD, and I've always had like an open mind. So then I thought, okay, am I going industry now, or am I, keeping doing things? And one of the things I got an offer here in Dallas from Professor Fischetti to do a postdoc. And yeah, I looked at my options. I had like an industry option as well. So then I decided, okay, let's do this thing. Let's go to Dallas. That looks interesting. Professor Fischetti is smart guy as well. It would be nice to work with him a couple more years. And then I came here, I joined the group, and then as a postdoc, I was kind of working with PhD students as well. And I enjoyed that part, just kind of teaching them what I knew and helping them out and doing research together. So then I stayed. I had the title of research associate, and after that I became research scientist after a couple of years. Because I guess Professor Fischetti also liked me and he wanted to keep me on. And then another 2 years later, I became assistant professor. I had, an opportunity outside as well, but I decided to stay at UT Dallas. They gave me a nice offer, and that's kind of, yeah, I done assistant professor, then associate professor, and then the professor here in Dallas. So I don't know if you have any more questions about that story, if I told it
No,
in the
that's
best
that's a
possible way.
very interesting story. My brain just stopped at the point you said you published like 40 papers in PhD. Like even if it's small.
I remember something like that. Yeah, I remember something like that. Yeah, when
And
I think so.
that's crazy in my opinion. 40. Like I don't know how
Yeah.
did you manage time and everything?
Well, like I said, a lot of them are co-authors, right? So if it's co-authors, it can be quite efficient. If you have an idea and then the person you gave that idea to thought that idea was important for their work, then they might put you as a co-author on their paper. So I would say I have to, give a lot of credit. And that's the number I remember. If I have it wrong, then maybe I do. But yeah, I remember, yeah, being involved in a lot. Yeah, I just, like to talk about research, and then had like certain input yeah, like there was another PhD student that I worked well with. So yeah, and then yeah, postdoc there. I think she was a postdoc at the time. She's a professor now that we worked with. So yeah, and then I came to Dallas here with a couple of months. So yeah, it's good to talk to people, and that can help your publication count as well if you have good ideas.
That's really inspirational, in my opinion. But continuing on your current research path, what does your lab actually do right now in the simplest way, if you can put for the audience? Because I gave a brief intro, but you would like to hear in detail from your side.
Yeah, just in general, I think we think about problems in a fundamental way, and in a way, in an academic way. We think about really what's happening at a fundamental level, and then we try to present an explanation of what's happening. And the most important part is probably to give some direction, to tell people, okay, this is something you could try that could make things better. And we all do all that by thinking and using computer and doing calculations and thinking about the laws of physics that are at hand and maybe verifying in between step if we have that available with experiments. So that's kind of what we do.
I see. So, while going through your profile, we saw that you work with some of the biggest name in semiconductor industry, like Intel, TSMC, Texas Instruments. So, what does that kind of collaboration actually look like behind the scenes? What are the general expectations from the lab and the work that you produce as an output?
I would say it's kind of fun. I mean, maybe that's not the answer you were expecting, but I think it's kind of fun because when you work with a company, you're kind of, I mean, of course, there's challenges too, right? You have to convince them that you're valuable in principle, but I don't think about that too much. I just do my thing. And it's fun because you know, actually change the world, right? There's things in your phone right now, probably that were like affected by the things that we did here in Dallas, right? So I work with Texas Instruments or TSMC. They made decisions a couple of years ago that now are in production that now affect like the exact phone that you have, your iPhone in your pocket. So that's fun. And then also another fun part is that these companies have smart people, right? They are the leaders in their field, in this field, which is, challenging, right? To if you think about it, you make this billion transistors, and they all work. Every single one works, right? Just think about that. So then you have very smart people, and I work with the research division, which usually are like the smartest of their smart people. And if you have work with them on a regular basis, that's fun just to work with smart people. And if you have a good working relationship, they can help you out as well.
I see. Is there any example that you have done certain work for TSMC or Texas Instruments that went through R&D and then towards production? Any example?
Well, the funny thing is they can't tell me, right? So they everything we do at the academic side is publishable. At least that's like I always work under that. Like whatever we do, we can publish. Now, the most important secret sauce, they do not want us to publish for their competitor, right? Intel doesn't want us to publish their deep secrets so TSMC can see them, than the other way around, or TI doesn't want one of their competitors to take their technology. So even I sometimes I tell them I don't want to know. I don't want to know if you implemented this or not, because then I can't publish it anymore. But like specific technologies we worked on, um, so with TI, like a technology we worked on a lot is called LDMOS technology. That's a technology that's applicable to like 5 volts and 3.3 volts, and maybe larger than that as well. So that's a growing market because of so much, DC converters that we have to charge our phones and batteries, right? Everything has batteries now, like phones. So all that battery management, those transistors, um, yeah, that's like something that was much smaller market 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So we've brought some ideas, and some of the stuff you can go through my Scholar and see what we have published to get an idea. But yeah, definitely some design choices probably have been inspired by what we said.
I see. So I have a follow-up question with this. So 2D materials have been called as the future of electronics for over a decade. So do you think they are living up the hype, and what it is going towards in the near future?
I mean, depends on how you say the hype. So from a research point of view, they're very much a hype, and they keep being a hype. And even in the physics community, they take these two materials, they rotate them by 1 degree, and then they see all these interesting physics. So in that sense, a lot of people are having a lot of fun. If you're talking about living up in the hype in terms of commercial products,
Mhm.
I mean, no, in a way, no, because we still have silicon is like, the main number material, right? Silicon is still out there. 2D materials, there's much, very, I mean, there's maybe some products, but compared to silicon, there's, no products. So in that sense, today they're not on the market yet. I think the good part about 2D materials is that there's no physics showstopper. So when you're dealing with problems, like sometimes it turns up that this is just violating the idea that you had. Oh, things could be great if I could, put this thing in, in this thing, and then it turns out that you want to put, a round thing into a square. It just is not possible, right? So 2D materials don't have that problem. There's no fundamental problem. It's more a materials problem. It's more an engineering problem than it's a physics problem, and those are better problems to have.
I see, I see. So as I went through your the group website, I saw that your group has developed its own open source software, Petra, for electronic transport calculations. So could you tell us about what inspired that, what code does it, and how it has contributed to your research?
Yeah, so what inspired us actually, Professor Fischetti. So, like I said, I did my postdoc with him, and um, so there's different ways of describing electronic devices. There's one called more like a tight binding, which is more a localized approach, and then there's a way to do plane waves. So yeah, Professor Fischetti has been historically interested in the plane wave approach. And then there's this other thing, which is called transport, which is where we look how things move. And traditionally, the localized way of describing the world has been more compatible with the transport. But, Professor Fischetti had some ideas, and then I also had some ideas of how it could be implemented. And then I ended up also with a great postdoctoral research who's now at IMEC, and so we kind of put those ideas together to develop this new way of doing the transport. And then once we had it, we said, okay, like, let's just make it open source. Let's put it out there. And yeah, so that's kind of the story behind that.
Okay, so can you define a bit more about the Petra, like introduce to the students how helpful it could be in their research, or is there any particular material that it's really good at when we define the electronic properties or transport properties?
I would say it's pretty advanced. So um, yeah, it's probably not the first tool you want to start with. And then I I think the great part is, although now with AI it's probably like even more. it was really well written. So this postdoc I had, he was really great code writer. So I think the most interesting thing you can do as a PhD student or something like that is to use that code and develop something new. That is the real, I think that is the more interesting thing than just using it to run a material. Now, of course, it was developed for things like silicon, so that's like the default material would start with. We also have graphene in there, but the most interesting thing I would say is not to run silicon or graphene. You can, right? But to use it to develop something new. And that's where the journey of the PhD. It's not a commercial tool. It's not a commercial tool where you buy the license, you run it to do something. It's a research tool, and the most interesting is to understand how it works.
I guess it's really important because I get so many queries where the students really want to learn certain code or the physics and implementation behind it, but since it's commercialized, they cannot access it if they are not into a PhD program. And to anyone watching, try it, use it, because it's an open source code. You can download it and try it on your system or your work machine, for example. So, moving to further, yeah.
Can I do one more shout out? So we did Petra in the past. I have another one of my students. He graduated. He is now at UT Austin, and he works on the EPW code, uh, which is part of the Quantum Espresso suite. So they are coming out with a Python interface for EPW, and I think that could be something very valuable for somebody that's looking, yeah, to see what's hot in terms of transport and things to try.
That's really interesting point. Thank you so much for touching that. Moving towards the next question, you teach both advanced engineering mathematics and a graduate course on semiconductor materials and devices. How do you think about bridging such different subjects, and what do you believe every material science student must deeply understand before stepping into the research part?
Yeah, I think the question is interesting. You say they're very different subjects. I don't think they're very different subjects. I think one is a prerequisite for the other. If you don't know your math, then you can't understand semiconductor devices. I don't understand how it's possible if you do not know what a gradient is and things like that, which are things I teach in engineering mathematics. I don't know how you can really understand how a semiconductor device works, right? You need to understand the Poisson equation. If you really want to understand what's going on, you need to understand, I mean, I teach the drift diffusion equations, things like that. So they're not that different. And then the second part was, yeah, what material science students, I mean, I think quantum is a very, I still think it's a very interesting topic. So everything you can understand about quantum, it just takes time for your brain to absorb that. So if you want to study something, start working on your understanding of quantum and make sure you get as deep as you can. So that would be my advice.
So, because there are many students who comes from bachelors of chemistry or masters of, I mean, in quite similar fields, but not an engineering background. So, what would you recommend if they do not have core understanding of mathematics? What should they do? I mean, how should they be better at it? Or maybe to be better at going towards research in semiconductor or material devices? So,
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, I would say if you're really not good at math, then probably don't try to do computational what I'm doing. I don't know. I mean, it sounds it's just challenging, right? If you don't understand the equations, then you can't really understand like what the limitations are of what you're doing. So I do think you need that basic understanding. But if you have the ability to do math and you just haven't been exposed that much in your major, then definitely work on that. You have to, yeah, work on improving. And like I say, it takes some time, right? You're not going to go from zero to knowing everything in 6 months' time. So try to catch up on the math, especially your basic algebra, your calculus. Make sure you have that down. You know how to take your derivatives, all that kind of stuff. I think it is a basis. It's very hard to do it if you don't know.
I see. I mean, I completely resonate with it because I came from a biotechnology background. then
Mhm.
toward material science. So for me, the initial years were difficult until I had to study everything from scratch so that I could be better at what I was doing at the one time of my PhD. So, if you could redesign how their PhD students are trained in computational material science, what would you change? Like, what would you change in the terms of process, and can they become a better student as a PhD?
Yeah, that's a very tough question. I think that's a question we try to ask ourselves every day in academia is how do we better study how teach our students. I mean, computational, I think probably like having more um yeah computational practice problems, like more calculations, I mean, depending on what level the student is, right? Use Python. Python, of course, is very big, right? So Python, use Python to calculate this property of a material, solve the Schrödinger equation. Maybe if you're a little bit more advanced, do a density functional theory calculation, calculate the lattice constant, calculate the electronic band structure if you're a little bit more advanced. So I think having more of that where you actually make the students do that themselves and having a way where they just don't copy paste from the internet what they need to do, but they actually go through it themselves. That's probably where something where yeah, where you could improve things.
So basically, you recommend a hands-on for everyone entering into a PhD, right? Maybe as a curricular part of the curriculum, or even before they're applying, like hands-on for any problem they could solve.
Yeah, I mean, it's not 100% hands-on, right? So I do think you need the basics like quantum mechanics, but it's often good to learn is by answering questions. If I ask you, okay, if I have a box that's 1 nanometer wide and I have an electron in that box, like what's the energy of the ground state of that electron? That's a question, if you've never seen quantum mechanics, you have no idea what my question basically means, right? So that question itself was, as you try to understand what it means, will teach you something. I'm in my classrooms. I'm also always kind of, what they call like the reverse classroom, whatever it is. I'm always talking to my students. I'm always asking them questions. How would you solve this? How would you do this? And of course, they don't know because I'm teaching them. But just understanding the level where they are at right now is something for me to pace myself, and then it's something for them. Like even understanding the question I'm asking is a big part of the learning process.
I see. I understand that. So, you come across a lot of students applying for PhD and also in the PhD curriculum. So, what do you look for in a student, not on the paperwork or CV, but how they are in person or how good is their research acumen?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? Getting good students, it's. I think an interview is one, is an important element. So in terms of personality, things I'll look for is like, do they have common sense? If they have worked on a problem, have they thought beyond the problem they've worked on, right? So if they present me something, have they taught they will not have the answer if it's not present in their presentation, it's not fully finished, but have they thought about one of the assumptions, right? If they're working on let's say a 2D material, but they're using a simulator for silicon, have they thought about the different parameters that go into that simulator and how they should be changed, or if they should be changed at all? So that will usually be like questions I ask is beyond what they show.
I see. So mostly how holistic approach of a student is and how many different pathways they can understand and think about the problem, eliminating the possibilities if that doesn't work. So that's what maybe you are trying to say, right?
I would say it's more like understand if they thought about assumptions. If they
Mhm.
just go in blindly and just do what they were supposed to do and they just clicked all the right buttons, but that's the only thing they did. I think I like to have a student who they were doing this, but then they were wondering like, oh, is it if I change this from 5 to 6? Do I have to change something else as well? If they thought about that, right? And of course, if it's a topic I know a lot about, I'll know, right? I'll know everything they were supposed to have done, right? And maybe whatever they did was completely wrong, but that's okay. As long as, within what they had, they thought about, oh, maybe this could be wrong. I mean, but I don't have time to look at that. But if they already thought about, okay, it could be wrong, that would be something. If they just like, don't even think about anything that they did. If they just run something, they think it's right. I don't know. That sounds a little scary to me.
I see, I see. So further on, are there any books on computational chemistry or material science or quantum mechanics that you would genuinely recommend students who want to build a strong foundation before or during the PhD?
Yeah, well, I have a book with Professor Fischetti. But I don't think that's a good one for before the PhD. That might be a good one like during the PhD. It's quite advanced. Um, I took a quick search. I think quantum, like I said, is very important. Maybe take a look at Griffith's Introduction to Quantum Mechanics, and try to see if you can find anything in that book. I think that might be a recommendation I give.
I see. Yeah, I mean, there are so many students asking the similar questions about books, but what I always believe that not every book is meant to be read completely start to end. I mean, I used to find few chapters from this book better and few chapters from the other book better. So that's what I always prefer. Do you think is it a good approach, or do you think that one should go from start to end if they know the book is good? Like, for example, Griffiths only, if we talk about.
No, no, no. I mean, the first few chapters of a book, I would say, are the most important ones.
Mhm.
That's where the stuff that you really need to know is, right? So chapter 7 or 8 with an asterisk may be a little bit less important, right? But the first couple of chapters, that is, yeah, that's really important, I think.
I see. So, having worked at IMEC and now in academia with strong industry collaborations, how would you advise a student deciding between industry and an academic career path after their PhD?
Yeah, so I myself, like I've always dealt with the world like a couple of years at a time. Like, okay, this next project for the next 2, 5 years, is that going to be something that looks interesting to me? In terms of your question here, I would say if you're a student, just go default industry. Just have your mind like, okay, I'm gonna go PhD, I'm gonna go industry after. It's gonna be fun if you find a good company to work in. And then during your PhD, you can see, oh, like I said, right? I think I had 40 papers. If you're seeing, okay, I'm publishing, 5 papers a year, okay, then maybe academia might be something for you, right? If you're just struggling like 3 years in to get your first paper, you might be perfectly fine in your PhD. But if you want to go the academia route, that may not be the right route for you.
So, is there a difference in the approach when it goes in, for example, for the idea you stated, someone who is publishing a lot in their PhD, could be for them because what I saw around my PhD was sometimes things didn't work. Sometimes the project was about to finish, and then the collaborator backed out. Something else was difficult. So, doesn't that go as a 50-50 also?
Yeah, but I mean, there's multiple ways to look at this, but either way, if you only have one publication at the end of your PhD, it's going to be really, really tough to explain, to get a faculty position, right? Either way, if it's your fault or not your fault. Um, but if you really have that, academic, it'll be natural for you I mean, you have to, depends on the environment, right? But you want to be in an environment where there's lots of people doing research, and then you want to be the kind of person that's going to naturally like talk to those people about their research. And if you have a wide understanding of a various number of topics, then you're going to get involved in multiple projects. But that depends on the environment, right? So there might be a little bit of luck involved, but at the end of the day, if you only have 1 or 2 papers at the end of your PhD, academia is just going to be challenging.
Yeah, I completely agree with you at this point of time. So, what advice would you give a student who is unsure whether a PhD is the right path for them? Because you also worked at IMEC before PhD, right? So, what path would you prefer or would you suggest? I mean, if it is for them or if it's not for them.
Yeah, it might not be the right path. It might be. It maybe. I think that you have to look at the reasons why you think it's not the right path. If you, yeah, I think it's not. Yeah, I think the main thing is you have to be interested in. That's the most important thing. You have to be interested in the topic, right? You shouldn't think about PhD or master's or job. I mean, you have to be like, say, okay, this is gonna keep me busy and my mind busy, and I'm going to work not because I'm in any program, just because I want to find out what's going on and I want to do something interesting. That's the thing you should look for, that interest.
It's more like being crazy and at the same time being extremely interested that I want to know what's going around. Like, I always believe if you are crazy enough to do something, you will find out ways to do that.
Yeah, I didn't want to I use the word crazy. So some
I mean,
people
I'm
might
using
think
it
like,
positively for sure because I
yeah,
have myself finished the same, went through the same path. So I always say, I mean, at least for my side, everyone asks me, "Are you crazy? You shifted from so many subjects." And it's like, no, I was crazy enough because I wanted to do this and I wanted to know it at any cost. It's because my master's was completely experimental and I was pissed off at our computational collaborators who were not finishing up the work. So I decided to do it by myself.
yeah. No, yeah, I think the point is, yeah, the PhD, you're like, if you want to be successful in the PhD, right? When you want to do something, you want to be good at it, right? So that's a lot more fun. And and if you want to be good at that, you want to have that internal motivation. You want to have, you wake up in the morning, the first thing you think about is like your research, and you go to bed, like the last thing you think about is your research. That's kind of where you want to be. And if that's your yeah, then I think you should do the PhD. Just go deeper into what you build that foundation for the rest of your career and do the PhD in something you're interested in.
I totally agree. What's the one thing you know now that you wish someone must have told you or told you at the start of your career?
I don't know really know what that how to deal with that, but I can tell. I think a lot of things are hard. Like a lot of things are much harder than you think that they should be. Like for example, right, getting into a PhD program. Yeah, it seems like, oh, I'm just going to apply and get in. But I think, a lot of, I mean, I guess I don't talk to those students since they don't get into the PhD program. But yeah, just getting in, I just see how things sometimes go is, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's not just hard for you. It's not because anybody hates you or whatever it is that they don't respond to your emails. It's just hard for everyone. And you just got to keep on trying and not, feel like the world is against you. The world is against everyone. It's just hard for everyone out there. So you just got to keep fighting and try to get, yeah, something interesting going.
As you're approaching the end of the podcast, I have just one more question, which is related to the previous one. Well, you were mentioning it's hard for students to get in. Also, one of the common questions I generally get is about statement of purpose and CV. So, do you all the professors go through the SOP like completely, or you mostly focus on the keywords that the student is mentioning and how relatable they are to your work? Maybe both in CV as we have summary at the start, or maybe in SOP.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we all have lots of things going on, right? I would say a lot more people read your email than you think, but a lot more people don't, they don't respond, right? And so why is that? Because yeah, we only got a couple of seconds to look at it. So definitely we're not going to be reading the whole statement of purpose. I would say CV is something I'm going to look at. If there's in the email there's something that draws my attention in the email. So for me, right? If they're doing quantum transport, and maybe they said they already published a paper in a journal that I know. Oh, that's gonna be this if they're an undergrad in India or Bangladesh or Iran or wherever it is, and they have a paper in this journal. I know how hard it is to publish in this journal. I mean, if they can do that, that's gonna draw my attention. Then I'm gonna open probably the CV is the place where I look. I like kind of understand what they did. Um, Yeah, I'll just take a glance there. And if that's like a perfect fit, if I can, or maybe open their paper if they have a paper, like look at their figures, see what they did, because I understand the field, like I'll have a good idea pretty fast.
Mhm.
So that would be if they had that paper, right? Other than that, I think one element that I still look at, I mean, maybe I'm becoming little too old, but I look at if they send me GRE, I'll take a look at that. So because again, I want that math ability, and then in terms of their interest, what they're interested in. And nowadays, you get a lot of ChatGPT primes, copy paste where they're like, oh, I'm interested in this and this. Then I open their CV and they did some kind of experimental work before, and it's not really clear to me at all that they have any background, which is okay. I mean, I don't mind them sending an email, but I'm not going to hire them because they're not clearly standing out. So, coursework, right? If you did great on your coursework, and I can understand, right? So if it's international, the transcript, I don't know necessarily what an A or a B or a 5 out of 10 means. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. But if I can see like, oh, I did really good on this computational, on all my computational courses that I did great. I mean, that doesn't guarantee they're going to be a good student, but I guess my recommendation would be like, if you're going for that, just put those courses, say you got the A, if you have like a good GRE score, put that in there. If you have a paper, put that in there. That would be stuff where I'm like, oh, and then match, right? Match with whatever your experience is with the professor. If that's a good match, that's going to strengthen it. If you communicate that, that's not just a copy paste from ChatGPT, but that's actually what you did. That's going to strengthen your case.
I see. So that was really helpful for all the students listening out there. And I thank you so much for joining in the podcast, accepting my invite. Is there anything that you want to say before we end the podcast, or any suggestion that you want to give?
Hmm. Okay, I don't know. That's a good question. So yeah, I guess Pooja, would you recommend people to? I mean, you kind of already answered it. You would recommend them to do the PhD, right?
I would definitely recommend doing a PhD, but as I said, you have to be really motivated, because I saw things not working, things working, learning a lot of stuff. So my idea was, even if the professor didn't have some time because he had a big group at that moment, I had to be really upfront with all the possible questions he might ask in the short time period I will get with him. So there was once, I remember, I knew he might ask me, why am I stating certain thing, and citing it from the experimental point of view, which I knew he might think it's not correct. So I already had the paper printed out, highlighted. The moment he asked the question, it was there on his table, like, this is the paper, that's what he has to do. So my idea is always be upfront, two steps ahead, understand in the first year how your professor thinks, what he might expect from you, and be ready with it, because he might not have a lot of time. So you have to be really, I would say, efficient, and talk to everyone that you could with all the possible questions and answers, because most of the answers I could get was within the group. And then only for certain final decisions, I used to go to my professor or co-supervisor. So, I mean, that made things a lot more efficient for me.
Yeah, and I had to, while you were talking, I had some idea of thinking what I want to end with. So I guess I want to end with like a little ad here for UT, for our department at UT Dallas. So if you are a student looking to do PhD, uh, or if you know somebody who is a student to look PhD, and you're a strong student, then apply, right? Even, I mean, apply not just to us, apply to other schools as well. But apply, and you can even, if you're strong and you send that email, you get a connection with a professor. That's a very good thing to have. And so, yeah, definitely, if you're a strong student, send that email. Like the email doesn't even cost you any money. Send that email, and if you're a strong student, that's what we're looking for in the department. We can make a competitive offer for you to come to UTD, and if it's a good match with one of the faculty, so I can always help you out at the, at the department, material science and engineering.
Thank you so much, Professor. Everyone hearing out, please go through the whole podcast completely. And then, if you want to, please apply at UT Dallas, because I have been there. It was a lovely time, and I'll be joining UTD in the coming fall session. So, if you have more questions, please ask us and put your comments in the Dropbox down there. You can mail Professor Vandenberghe. I'll drop his email ID also. So, or at the UTD Admission Center. So if you have any more questions, please ask us. And thank you so much, Professor, for joining in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.